Tonight, two ministers quit the government, marking another blow for Rishi Sunak as his MPs head off on their Easter break. A mini reshuffle is underway. Robert Halfon quits as Education Minister and says he'll stand down as an MP at the general election. And Armed Forces Minister James Heappey also goes. Tonight, the Prime Minister is carrying out a mini reshuffle. We'll bring you the latest on that live. We'll also speak to one of Halfon's now former colleagues at the Department for Education, Children's Minister David Johnston. Plus, Defence Minister Johnny Mercer has been told he faces going to prison if he doesn't reveal the names of those who told him about alleged murders carried out by special forces in Afghanistan. And a new video from the Conservatives begs the question, are American-style campaign ads going to become the norm here in the UK? Caroline Flint and Nimco Ali will be with us for the next hour, and they approve this message. It's Tuesday. I'm Sophy Ridge, live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. We're going to get to the politics in a moment, but we're starting the show tonight with the news of a major bridge collapsing in Baltimore in the United States. 2 people have been pulled from the water, but 6 are still missing. Well, the entire middle section of the 1.6-mile-long bridge collapsed after a cargo ship crashed into it early this morning, moments after the ship seemed to lose power. Rescue workers are still searching the water for survivors, and the Governor of Maryland has declared a state of emergency after that bridge collapse. And tonight, the President of the US, Joe Biden, said the search and rescue operation was his top priority.
The bridge collapsed, sending several people and vehicles into the water, into the river, and multiple U.S. Coast Guard units, which are stationed very nearby, thank God, were immediately deployed along with local emergency personnel. And the Coast Guard is leading the response to the port, where representatives from the Federal Highway Administration, the FBI, the Department of Transportation, the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as Maryland officials and Baltimore Police and Fire, are all working together to coordinate an emergency response.
Well, our US correspondent Martha Kellner is in Baltimore for us at the scene. Martha, what's the latest?
Yeah, well, you can see just behind me, Sophie, this is the Francis Scott Key Bridge. It's one of the main bridges in Baltimore, and it's quite horrifying to see the level of destruction here. You may be able to make out in the foreground the Dali shipping container, which has taken away one of the main 2 support pillars of this bridge, bringing it down almost in its entirety. The people on the bridge, quite frankly, stood no chance. We understand that 8 maintenance workers were on the bridge at the time of the collapse. One of those was rescued and taken to hospital with serious injuries. Another had limited to no injuries. He didn't receive any hospital treatment. 6 people are still missing, and we understand they were working on that bridge to fix potholes. I was speaking to one of their friends just a short while ago. He said that all of those workers were from either Mexico or Central America. He said that their company puts their safety paramount, but that he can't believe what happened here. He said they were working in what was supposed to be a safe zone when that bridge hit them. People may be aware there was actually a mayday call made by the crew aboard that ship just minutes before. They said that they'd lost propulsion, that they were heading towards the bridge and couldn't avoid it. As a result, officials on either side of the bridge, and this is a toll bridge, so it is manned at all times of day and night on either side. Those officials stemmed the flow of traffic, avoiding what presumably would have been an even worse tragedy than we've seen unfolding today, Sophie.
Thank you very much indeed. Martha Kellner there at the scene of that bridge collapse. We're going to be bringing you more coverage of what happened in Baltimore in a special programme with Yalda Hakeem at 9 p.m. tonight, the Baltimore Bridge Collapse special programme, 9 p.m, so do join her for that. Now, I want to bring you back to the United Kingdom and specifically to Harlow in Essex. It's one of the new towns built after the Second World War. It's known for being a bit unglamorous, having a lot of roundabouts. I actually really love Harlow. I lived there for 6 months when I was 21 and trained to be a journalist, and I also love the people who live there. They don't take any nonsense. So it makes total sense to me that Harlow is a bellwether town. The party chosen by the people of Harlow typically goes on to form the next government. It swung to Labour in '97, Conservative in 2010, and now Labour have it keenly in their sights again. It is no coincidence that when I went on the road with Keir Starmer a couple of weeks ago, he chose to visit a school in Harlow when we did that. Today, though, the Conservative MP for Harlow, Robert Halfon, has quit government and announced he's standing down at the next election. In his resignation letter, he says it's simply time to step down, to do something else. But look, we know the reality. Robert Halfon is an MP deeply embedded in his constituency. He knows the way that Harlow is swinging. It's also a similar story for James Heapy, albeit in a very different place, Wells, a cathedral city in picturesque Somerset. He's officially quit as Armed Forces Minister today with a parting shot over defence spending. He's also standing down at the election. And it's the Lib Dems this time, with their eyes on his 9,000 vote majority. So we have two very different MPs, two very different parts of the country, telling a very similar story about the declining electoral prospects of the Conservative Party. Well, those two departures have sparked a mini reshuffle from Rishi Sunak. Tonight, we can talk now to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, who's across it all. In many ways, the biggest story is the resignations, I guess. We were talking there about the two very different places, Wells and Harlow, but they're two very different people as well.
That's right. I think that tonight will resonate inside the Conservative Party because both James Heapy and Rob Halfon are popular, well-known, well-liked figures who, I think particularly in the case of Rob Halfon, the announcement that he's standing down will trigger something of a shock. If we take them in turn, James Heapy, very long-serving Armed Forces Minister, very well regarded. He's served out, you know, he started that job when Boris Johnston was Prime Minister and he's still there, so he survived multiple Prime Ministers. And I think that nobody ever sort of doubted his dedication to the defence cause. And he has been somebody who, not least to our colleague Deborah Haynes, has been championing the need to increase defence spending right now. Now, that is an issue that's coming up almost daily for the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister's before some MPs on the liaison committee today. So let's hear just how that went.
Would you accept that there is a point where we can't afford not to invest more in our national defence?
I agree with that, and that's why we are, and we have prioritised it.
So that's prioritised, but not with a date or any specifics, and that's what you keep hearing from Rishi Sunak. Let's look at the other figure.
Yeah, Robert Halfon. As you say, two quite popular figures, but different wings of the party, it's fair to say?
So Rob Halfon represents something, I think, sort of quite unusual. Now, he might just be a junior education minister right now, but his role in the Conservative Party over the last 14 years since he was elected in Harlow has been much, much bigger than that. I think he would style it as a champion of blue-collar conservatism. Perhaps you might call it working-class conservatism. A part of the Tory party demographic and support group that hasn't always been there for the Tories, but figures like Rob Halfon, and particularly Rob himself, have worked and fought successive leaders to stand up for. And I think Rob Halfon will be able to look back at his time in Parliament as somebody who can nominate real achievements. He is one of the figures who is behind the fuel duty cuts and freezes that we've seen over so many budgets.
It was almost a running joke, wasn't it? I remember in George Osborne's budgets that, there's another bit more money that Robert Halfon's managed to get out of me this time, I remember. And
he was a big figure as chair of the Defence of the Education Select Committee. Again, sometimes pushing for higher spending at a time where perhaps the Conservative instinct was for less. Again, I'm going to take you back to that liaison committee hearing today where Rishi Sunak was asked about isn't there a desperate need for more spending in parts of our public services. Listen to this.
I think it's just incumbent on colleagues to explain which department they think that increase should come at the expense of, or indeed what taxes should be raised to pay for it.
Do you think that, Robert Halfon was praising Rishi Sunak, he's an ally of Rishi Sunak really, isn't he? But do you think it does perhaps tap to disquiet?
Well, we've seen 50-plus Tory MPs saying that they're standing down. And I think Tory MPs who, Robert Halfon was 55, James Heapy was 43, not exactly necessarily of retirement age. Rob Halfon could have gone on, and as many people do, done so in order to accrue some of the generous pension rights that you get as an MP. It is by no means a necessity that he had to go at this point, and the letter does not give a specific reason for going. And I think his colleagues in the Tory party, both of their colleagues in the Tory party, might be looking at this and some of them asking, well, if them, why not me?
That's a good point. Sam, thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates, our Deputy Political Editor. There has been a mini reshuffle to replace the jobs. Nus Ghani, Minister in the Foreign Office, Leo Doherty, Minister of State in the Ministry of Defence, Kevin Hollenrake in the Department for Business, Luke Hole taking Rob Halfon's job in the Department for Education, and Alan Mack, a parliamentary Under-Secretary of State. Now, just before that mini reshuffle got underway, I spoke to the Children's Minister, David Johnston. Thank you very much for being on the programme. Two ministers resigning, saying that they are going to be quitting ahead of the next election as well, James Heappey and Robert Halfon. I mean, what does that say about the state of the Conservative Party?
Well, James and Robert are both two great talents for the party, and I've worked with Rob quite a bit. He's been a fantastic champion for further education skills, apprenticeships, right from when he was a backbencher to chairing the Education Committee when I was on it, to 2 stints as a minister. So it will be sad to see him go, but he's been the MP for coming up 14 years, and he was actually first selected as a candidate for Harlow back in 1999, so I think he's done a fair stint.
There's a bit more to it than that, though, isn't there? I mean, I know Harlow quite well. I lived there for 6 months. It's a bellwether. He won in 2010, and he's quitting because he knows Labour's going to take it next time. Same with James Heappey. 9,000 majority in Wales. The Lib Dems will be licking their lips at that. It says something about the state of the party, doesn't it?
I think if you look at the MPs that left at the last election in 2019, their average tenure was about 14 years. Now, people leave for all sorts of reasons.
Come on, you know that this says a lot about the state of the party. You know that.
If you read Rob Halfon's letter, he's hugely proud of what he's done for the people of Harlow. He's also a huge supporter of the Prime Minister, which he's made very clear in his letter, and I've no doubt he'll continue to be one.
I mean, you, I think, were elected in 2019, so you're kind of a relative newbie.
Yeah.
Is it a bit like, turning up at a party finally and finding that everyone's leaving?
Not quite. It's certainly been a very eventful period. When we first arrived, people said, oh, it's going to be brilliant for you guys because politics will be really normal. The Brexit deadlock has been broken and you'll be able to get on with normal domestic issues. And 12 weeks later, we were in lockdown with the pandemic, and the combination of that and the war in Ukraine and death of Queen Elizabeth and cost of living and so on, a lot has been packed into these 4 years. And people like Rob and James had been there for quite a number of years before that. So I can't blame them for wanting to go and do something else while they've got time.
You say that Robert Halfon was very supportive of Rishi Sunak. Of course, the two are close. James Heappey, it feels like, does have some issues with the government's policy, specifically on defence. He's been calling, hasn't he, for the government to hit its target of spending 2.5% of GDP on defence.
Oh, and I think the Prime Minister and the rest of the government have been clear that that is something that we want to do when it's economically possible to do so.
That's the key bit, though, isn't it? Because James Heappey is saying, look, we need to do this now. Look at the threats in the world, look at the state of the armed forces. We cannot meet our defence commitments unless we spend more money on defence. That is a clear differentiation, isn't it?
Well, James Heappey is a great champion for defence and hugely respected on all sides of the House. But you're absolutely right that the point I made was when it's economically responsible to do so, because that's the key difference between us and the Labour Party, that we do things when they are genuinely affordable and we have clear plans to do so, and they make all sorts of commitments, like decarbonising the energy grid by 2030, which we've just found out will cost £116 billion.
It's about priorities for spending, though, isn't it? And James Heappey is saying that right now the government is not prioritising defence spending the way that it should.
I think you've seen considerable amounts of money go into defence.
So he's wrong, then,
an integrated review. I mean, James is a champion for defence. I would expect him to champion defence and call for more money to go into it. That's what all departmental ministers do for their particular areas. But the Prime Minister has been clear that he too shares James's commitment to having a strong defence, and we will put as much money into it as long as it is affordable to do so.
Now, you got an announcement today on funding for special needs. What's the plan?
What we're doing today is announcing £850 million going to local authorities across the country to help them create more special school places, because we know that some children with special educational needs can have their needs met in mainstream schools if their needs are identified early enough, but we know that some other children will always need that specialist provision. And what we're doing today is part of creating 60,000 more special school places. We've already done some of that, and the money today will help us achieve that in the coming years.
Is there, I guess, is today a bit of a recognition that some parents have struggled to get the support that their children need?
Well, as a constituency MP, I have had conversations with many parents in my constituency who feel that getting the support for their children is too often a war of attrition. Now, that is a war that any parent would wage, but it's a war that no parent should have to. And that's why we've been putting in £2.6 billion to transform the special educational needs system. When we came to power, if you looked at the past 13 years of the Labour government, you actually saw a decline in the number of children in special school places from 93,000 to 89,000, whereas what we're doing now is creating 60,000 more places, some of them already created, more to come with this 850 million today, to make sure that parents can get the right support at the right time in the right place.
You're talking about the need for special school places, but there's also, of course, another issue with special needs about trying to support children in the existing school system. You're talking about the constituents that you speak to. I'm on the sort of school run an awful lot. I talk to some parents with friends and other parents who have children with additional needs. And one thing that they say a lot is that it takes so long for them to get the funding that they need, that by the time that the school gets the funding in place to support their child, it's almost time for them to leave and go to another school. What kind of delay do you think is acceptable?
Well, I don't want to see any delays at all. And last year we published our improvement plan to set out how we were going to change that experience for parents. Because the biggest issue with the special educational needs system is inconsistent outcomes in different parts of the country. We've never had a national system for special educational needs where you consistently got the same level of support wherever you were in the country. And that's what our improvement plan is creating, including looking at how the EHCP form that you often need to get that support can be standardised, digitised, and made consistent for parents all over the country.
There's just something else that I wanted to touch on while I've got you as the kind of Minister for Families, for children, etc. Because there is obviously a lot of debate going on at the minute about the declining population, ageing population, the fact that people are having children later or having less children. Miriam Cates, Conservative MP, has been quite outspoken on this. She says that actually, parents need to, or young people need to face up to the fact that actually they need to start having kids a bit earlier. Do you agree with that?
I think that's a decision for each family, but you're absolutely right. There has been a decline in the birth rate. That has led to some primary schools closing in different parts of the country, including some nurseries in the childcare area that I'm responsible for. What we're doing with our single biggest ever investment in childcare is enabling working families to know that they'll be able to get 30 hours of free childcare every week from when their children are 9 months old until they start school. Childcare is, as you doubtless know, one of the biggest cost pressures facing working families at the moment. We're going to double the amount we spend on it to support families.
So do you think that perhaps is putting off some families from having kids?
I've certainly seen some polling that suggests that one of the concerns that some people who might like children have is about the cost, including of childcare, and that's why we're putting so much money into it.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, let's bring in our duo for the evening, shall we? The former Home Office advisor, Nimco Ali, and the former Labour Minister, Caroline Flint. Great to have you both on the show tonight. So, Caroline, you fought a few close elections in your time, I think it's fair to say. How much should we read into the fact that we've got both Robert Halfon and James Heappey standing down?
Yeah, I think it's significant. I think I was working out the total is now 63 Conservative MPs who said they're standing down, and who knows, there may be some more. Gives a chance for pretty much everyone on the Conservative benches to maybe become a minister by the time we get to the general election. But I think it is significant. I mean, Sam mentioned earlier about Rob in particular. He did represent that sort of, if you like, that working class Conservative voice. He was pretty tough on issues, but he also recognised the need for public spending, particularly to give the opportunities to people in communities where mum and dad just can't bail out things for their children or buy education and what have you. So that's really significant. I think also with both of them, I mean, part of this is also making a judgment about an election down the road, and as ministers stepping down from that, giving them some time to basically rethink their career options. And there are restrictions on ministers in terms of jobs and what have you when they step down from ministerial posts. But I think it's, you know, it's another example of where, you know, such a high proportion of Conservative MPs are making it very clear they're not standing the next general election. And for both these seats, whether it's from a Labour onslaught or from a Liberal Democrat, there'll be sort of happy faces in those parties, I think, at the announcements today.
Yeah, do you agree with that then?
I do. I think it is quite significant, but I think also at the same time we have to realise the toll that being an MP and being a minister has taken on a lot of people, especially during the pandemic. And some of these have come in through 2019 and onwards. So I think there's a kind of like a balanced situation in that.
I thought it was quite interesting. Rob Halfon was, you know, quite gushing really about Rishi Sunak in his resignation letter. There's clearly, you know, a bond between the two men. He supports him. James Heappey, though, it feels like has got a bit of beef with the PM, particularly over defence spending and failing to meet that target of 3.5% of GDP. Defence spending feels like it is growing into a big issue.
Well, it's been a big issue for a long time because, we are a country still in the world, despite our size, that has a big say on issues of defence and security. We're on the Security Council of the United Nations, for example. But also, we play a massive part, not just in conflict issues that we have been involved in directly, but also within the UN as well, in terms of what we provide in terms of forces and troops there too. And of course, the other aspect of all this is it's getting more expensive. The kit is getting more expensive. The technology is more expensive, making big procurement decisions. This is a big spend department. And for a long time now, it's been said it should be, 2% of GDP, and it is just not there. And this was a promise that the Conservatives made. And for someone like, him, who has very much sort of, championed this, I suppose he just feels he's not being heard, and therefore I've got to think of other things I want to do. But it is you put up an ambition, at some point people are going to call you out on it.
And we heard from the Children's Minister, didn't we, the government line, that, look, it's the government's ambition to get there when the economic conditions allow it. Do you think that's sustainable?
I think that is sustainable, but I think the expenditure on international developments, I think it's going to be a bigger question within the election, and I think that's going to be for both Labour and the Conservative. I'm not necessarily sure when defence actually comes in as a bigger thing within the millennials and the younger people, because as a society we are trying to pull back from war and trying to have more expenditure on international development. I think that also is the case for that is about when the financial case comes, then we'll go back to 0.7%. Yeah. So I think actually the 0.7% is going to be a bigger case on the election than the defence spending anyway from my generation onwards.
Are you worried that it's seen as a bit of a soft target when people are looking to cut money?
I think it can be seen like that, but I can honestly say that with David Cameron back in the Foreign Office and also having Andrew Mitchell as the Defence Minister, I think this government is committed to the 0.7% in principle, but I think, again, it's a financial decision, not a political one.
OK, thanks both very much. Indeed, we'll have more from Caroline and Nimco throughout the hour. You're watching the Politics Hub. Coming up, a 40% rise in the number of people calling a domestic abuse helpline in the last 3 years, and ministers failing victims of domestic violence. And a slightly incomprehensible attack ad? Have the Conservatives taken one leaf too many out of the US election playbook and left a British audience bewildered? Or, after all we are talking about it, is this all part of the Livido plan? Plus, after the break, Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer is told he faces prison if he doesn't reveal the names of those who told him of alleged murders carried out by special forces in Afghanistan. Hero or liability? We'll debate.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. Alex Crawford joining us now from Ukraine.
Their personal possessions are all scattered around the place.
Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, try and make sense of the big numbers for us.
Things can change incredibly quickly, and that's what they have done.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back. Let's talk now about an extraordinary row concerning the Veterans Minister, Johnny Mercer. Now, he passed on accusations about alleged murders carried out by British Special Forces in Afghanistan and was then told by the Afghanistan inquiry that he faces going to prison if he doesn't reveal the names of his sources. Now, the former soldier has repeatedly refused to hand over the names of multiple officers who told him of allegations of murder, saying he was not willing to compromise his integrity. In a statement following his appearance at the committee last month, Johnny Mercer said, "I've at all times been honest, forthright and truthful and have tried to live by these values both during my time in service and subsequently as a minister. I do not, however, share the view of the inquiry that I have a misguided interpretation of integrity or an inappropriate sense of loyalty." He then added, "As stated during my testimony, I have a duty of care to those who provided me information in confidence. I'm equally committed to assisting this inquiry in every way I can and will continue to explore every avenue by which I can do this." Right, let's talk now to Sky's political correspondent, Tamara Cohen. Tamara, I just can't get my head around this. What is going on?
So the Afghanistan inquiry, which has only just started having hearings, is looking into claims that civilians were executed by British Special Forces in Afghanistan between 2010 and 2013. And they took some pretty extraordinary evidence last month from the Defence Minister, Johnny Mercer, who said that when he was an MP, multiple officers alleged to him that unarmed civilians were unlawfully killed, and there was claimed to have been a cover-up of this. He said that he'd had first-hand testimony, including from someone who had been asked to plant a gun on someone to look like they were a legitimate target, and various other people, some of whom he knew when he was a serving soldier, saying things which he says alarmed him. Now, he was asked to name these people and he refused to do so, even though the inquiry said that it could be done confidentially. They wouldn't reveal it to anyone apart from the inquiry's legal team. Now, he said no, and today yesterday, in fact, he got a letter from the chair of the inquiry, Sir Charles Haddon-Cave, saying that if he doesn't reveal those names in the next 10 days, then he could face contempt of court proceedings and end up with a fine or even going to prison for up to a year. Now, Johnny Mercer, as you heard there, has been saying that he won't name anybody because it's a matter of integrity for him, that people feel they can come to him and make these allegations. And there were some pretty bad-tempered exchanges between the two of them at that hearing a month or so ago, when he was told by the inquiry chair he had to decide which side he was on. And this is what he said.
This court doesn't intimidate me. You don't intimidate me. I will try and help you. Let me finish. I will try and help you as much as I can. But that is the same for individuals who will come across this court. They are not intimidated by being in this court. There are greater issues at stake. And you are not going to get there if you persistently say make out or infer through your questioning that I am not helping you or I'm not here to tell the truth.
Now, Johnny Mercer is not speaking publicly because the inquiry is still going on, the proceedings are still active, but he has until next Friday to provide those names or provide some compelling legal reasons why he's not going to hand them over. And we're in basically a standoff, and he has some quite strong supporters. One of his supporters is Lord Dannat, the former head of the army, who provided a statement to us today saying it's fundamentally important that army whistleblowers have the trust of MPs and don't feel that they're essentially going to be sold out. So is he going to provide those names? Well, it very much doesn't sound like it. So we now have the prospect of a serving minister potentially facing, a few steps down the line, if he ends up being prosecuted, a fine or a prison sentence if he doesn't provide those names. So this could be quite a big story.
Absolutely extraordinary. Tamara, thank you very much for talking us through all of that. Tamara Cohen there. Right, let's bring in Nimco and Caroline at this moment, shall we? Extraordinary story. Nimco, what do you make of it all?
I have no idea why he said that in the first place. Anyway, I don't necessarily think it was something that he should have brought into an open court. If this is information that he wanted to share, I think he could have shared it a little bit more discreetly. So ultimately, yeah, it is just a bizarre situation.
I know Johnny Mercer has been very involved in, and I understand why, trying to protect forces personnel from allegations that happen in conflict situations where we're not quite sure what's going on and accusations are flying around. But I have to say, just listening to this and Tamara's report, if you have been told by serving or ex-military personnel that they have evidence and may have witnessed murders being committed illegally by our troops, if they are whistleblowers and they gave that to me, I would want to then work to see that that was heard by the right people so action could be taken. We do not have a policy in this country that our military personnel can execute civilians. We're signed up to all sorts of international regulations, our own regulations on that. And I just feel in this case that, as you've said, Nimco, he said it in this open court situation, he's basically saying that he has heard by multiple people that some of our forces personnel were involved in Afghanistan in killing civilians. And if that's the case, I think there's a responsibility there to take that to the right people so the investigations take place to make sure this is put right. Because actually, without doing that, it casts a shadow over all our personnel working in those places. And I don't get what he thinks
I think he had the right intentions, but he just did it in a completely wrong way. And I think this is the conversation that we're having right now, where like the head of the army has to kind of step in. I think it's really a bizarre situation.
And it's difficult, isn't it? Because look, it's really important to emphasise that these are allegations. They're not even direct allegations. They are second-hand allegations. We have no idea. It is very difficult to kind of feel the way through. I mean, I guess, look, the inquiry says that it will all be heard in confidence, but do you think, is there a kind of a way that we can understand Johnny Mercer's perspective where you worry that things are going to leak out?
I completely understand his perspective, but ultimately also, and I don't mean this in any disrespect, but I think we have serving army people on the front line. So to make these accusations on the front line, say that, like, the army has actually killed civilians and they've been kind of murdered, ultimately puts people that are serving at risk at the moment as well. The way this is being handled is actually quite messy.
It's not helping anybody. And again, we don't know what was the nature of these conversations. It could have been over a beer in a whatever, and gossip, or is it actually whistleblowing? And if there's whistleblowing, normally whistleblowers want that to be taken somewhere, to be acted upon. And there's right ways to do that.
Really difficult. Thank you both very much indeed, Nimco and Caroline there, discussing that story, which, of course, could very well feature in tomorrow's newspapers. We're going to have our extended press preview and news review from 10:30 this evening. That's with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us with that will be the journalist and author Jenny Kleeman and the PR consultant and Conservative candidate in the upcoming general election, Alex Dean. You're watching the Politics Hub. Coming up later in the programme, the attack ad that's got all of Westminster talking, even after it was withdrawn from X, Twitter. I just can't get my head around X still. Was that always the plan? We'll have the story. And after the break, a massive rise in victims of domestic violence seeking advice about the criminal justice system. Is the state failing vulnerable women? Hello, welcome back. Next tonight, Sky News can reveal the National Domestic Abuse Helpline recorded a 40% rise in victims seeking advice about the criminal justice system. That's between 2020 and 2023, according to the charity Refuge. Now, it comes as the police and the Crown Prosecution Service have today launched a new framework to help victims reporting domestic abuse. Well, I just want to take you through the numbers, because since 2015, domestic abuse prosecutions have fallen by 45% in England and Wales. That's from 92,780 to 51,288. And charges have also dropped by 44% in the same period. Now, while thousands of protective orders designed to prevent perpetrators from contacting victims are breached every year. We are going to talk more about this important domestic abuse story, but I do want to bring you some breaking news before we do, because the Governor of Maryland, that is Wes Moore, is giving an update on that bridge collapse.
Chance to speak with both the President and the Vice President, who have been full-throated in their support of everything that we're doing here in Maryland, and we just want to say how grateful we are to them, how grateful we are to the Secretary of Transportation and the Department of Transportation, who, within hours of this happening, I was on the phone with the Secretary of Transportation. I think Secretary Buttigieg has been calling me at 3:30 in the morning. And now he and his entire team have been down here this afternoon spending time looking at the efforts, looking at the damage, and also identifying what they can do to support and help. Can't tell you enough how much we appreciate that, Mr. Secretary. And also, please let the President and the Vice President know from the bottom of our heart how much we appreciate it as well. We've also had a chance to be here with our remarkable congressional delegation. From the earliest parts of the morning, our congressional delegation has been there throughout. And I always say I'm grateful that I've got such a remarkable congressional delegation. And today, I just have another example as to why I am a very lucky governor to have the congressional delegation that I have. And also our state, our local elected officials, Mayor Scott, who literally got a call from the very first thing in the morning. I know you have had no rest in a very long time, sir. And so I want to say how much we appreciate you. But also, it's to the members of the philanthropic community who've been reaching out and offering support. It's the members of the private sector who've been reaching out and offering support. It's the sandwich companies who have said we're going to shut down because we just want to make sure that the first responders are getting meals. Everybody has stepped up. Everybody has raised their hands to serve. And I can tell you, it is so deeply appreciated. It's so deeply felt. And for everyone who is offering prayers and supports, I can tell you those prayers are working and we are grateful. And the thing that I would ask for people to remember is this. The first, this is very much still a search and rescue mission. We are still actively looking for survivors. We know, and that's the pledge we've made to these families. And this is still very much an active search and rescue mission. And there is not a single resource that we will hold off on deploying. I have already authorized the deployment of everything from air, land, and sea resources to make sure that this search and rescue operation is carried out to its fullest intent. The second thing I want to remind people is that this will not be short. There's going to be a long road. There's going to be a long road, not just as we go from search and rescue. There'll be a long road as we talk about what does the future of this region, the future of the area look like. And we're going to need each and every one of you. We're thankful to have partners like what we have in the Biden-Harris administration. We're thankful for the partners that we have in our federal delegation. We're thankful for the partners we have in our state and local leadership. We're thankful for the partners that we have in the private sector and the philanthropic community. We're thankful for the partners that we have within the Moore-Miller administration. We're thankful for each and every one of you, both Marylanders and non-Marylanders who have reached out and offered support. We feel it. We need it. And we are truly grateful for it. And I think just in this time, this state has been able to show what it means to be Maryland tough and Baltimore strong. And this state and this city will continue to show exactly that. And so with that, I want to turn it over to our Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, with a deep sense of thanks and appreciation. Oh, I apologize.
Well, that was the Governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, with an update on that bridge collapse. He was saying that it is very much still a search and rescue mission that is going on, with 6 people still missing after the cargo ship crashed into the bridge in Maryland, in Baltimore. Let's return now to the domestic news that we were covering, that the National Domestic Abuse Helpline recorded a huge increase, 40% rise, in victims seeking advice about the criminal justice system. That's according to the charity Refuge. Sky's Molly Malone has gained rare access to police and prosecutors. She has this report.
Police emergency, what's your location?
It is the crime that happens at home. It thrives on privacy and ruins lives.
I feel like I'll always live in fear. I don't think I'll ever be free.
Sadie, not her real name, was abused by her partner for a decade.
He hid in the boot of my car. He'd rock up at work. He put cameras on the house. He locked us in the house.
He eventually moved out, but kept coming back. He was arrested but released on bail. And then one night he came back. Sadie rung the police.
When we saw the blue lights, he went crackers, obviously. Poured petrol all over the hallway. When I've turned around, he's got my son at the top of the stairs and he had a knife to his throat and he was like, come back in or I can't see it. Sorry.
It took hours to escape. Her ex went to prison, serving 3 years, half his sentence. But Sadie says attitudes need to change.
From the police, they just need to take things more seriously.
The police force involved told us they're committed to making improvements and safeguarding victims.
The biggest frustration for us is the repeat of domestic violence.
It keeps happening.
It keeps happening.
But there are so many victims, more than 2 million in the last year. The government say it should be treated as seriously as terrorism.
If there were 2 million victims of terrorism, do you not think we'd be shouting a bit louder?
Yes, absolutely. It's really important that we understand the scale of this. This is a priority for every police force in the UK. It's a priority for the Crown Prosecution Service.
Police and prosecutors promising to improve the system. But domestic abuse prosecutions have been reducing year on year for the last decade.
That doesn't look very good, does it?
So we share the concern about the volume of cases that are going through the courts. We're prosecutors. We want to see more of these cases.
They say they're trying to turn the tide, but domestic abuse is a crime that repeats itself. Controlling, coercing, and constant. Its victims are feeling failed, an everyday emergency with no end in sight. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Molly Malone's report there. Right, let's talk to Nimco and Caroline, shall we? I think one of the things that gets me is that we're talking about a significant rise in calls to the helpline, but in the same breath, we're also talking about convictions and prosecutions going down. I mean, that's pretty depressing.
Yeah, and of course, you've discussed before as well, Sophie, is the fact that we've had a lot of horrendous examples of serving police officers being violent to women in all sorts of ways, including murdering those women as well. So this is the situation that, you know, women, girls are looking at, is the people to protect us, the culture within the police, not just in the Metropolitan Police, but elsewhere, is just not good enough. And I think the framework that has been put forward today, what I've looked at it, I think it's strong on the challenge. Every 3 days, a woman is killed as a result of domestic violence. Too many children are living in homes where they are witnessing domestic violence. It's strong on the challenge. I'm just not sure that there's enough in it that I could see that you could practically say, is this going to turn the tide? And at the heart of this, I suppose for me, is partly about what is moving these men to do this, and what do we define as a good man? You know, what are the merits of a good man? And it is not about coercion. It is not about some sort of warped masculinity in which you control and repress the person you're meant to love the most. And we never really have that conversation about that. And so for me, a lot of this stuff is, yeah, this is a problem. But I'm not hearing anything that is going to turn the tide. And I feel really sad about that. I do. I really feel sad about that.
Yeah, you can tell. That really comes across strongly.
No, incredibly, yeah. No, I completely agree with everything that Caroline was saying. And I think one of the kind of things is that we're using the term domestic abuse, but in that case, that you can see the fact that what he was doing was attempted murder. This is like actual physical.
Very good point. Yeah.
It's a physical assault. So I think we will also need to start actually describing what these acts of violence are, not just putting it in this whole holistic thing of domestic abuse. Yes, these are criminals that are known to the people that they're abusing, and that's where the domestic aspect comes from. But ultimately, they're committing horrific crimes such as rape and murder.
There was a woman who I've spoken to a little bit over the years whose daughter was killed by her partner. It's a campaign group that they have called Killed Women, and I find their message very powerful when they're talking about the different way that murder of women is treated if it's done in the home or on the street. And that's obviously not to diminish, a stranger murder, appalling tragedies. But why is it that somehow if something happens in the home with a perpetrator who is known to the victim, it does feel like somehow that isn't taken as serious as it should be?
And the way it's treated differently is that victim blaming element of the whole thing of like, what did you do? Well, why did you not leave? And all these kind of conversations rather than actually pushing it back onto the perpetrator. And that also comes back to the horrific rates of rape prosecutions that we have. That we're consistently looking at women who are the victims to also be the ones to provide the excuses for these men so we can punish them. So, yeah, I think a lot has to change, and I completely agree with Caroline.
And it can happen to anyone. It's important that, we actually think about, how we view the victims as well. It's not...
I can think of two cases as an MP that, always stand out in my mind when the subject of domestic violence is discussed. One was where a family, their daughter was killed by her partner. He was found guilty, but the sentence he was given was derisory. And I supported that family to go to the courts to seek a review of that sentence, and it was lengthened. And the other standout case that happened in my constituency actually was about two boys who attacked and nearly killed two other boys. They were children. And actually, as things were revealed, they'd been brought up in a home where domestic violence was something they were witnessing all the time, and seeing their father doing that to their mother. And again, this is why this is massive for the adults, but it is massive for the children as well, whether they are boys and girls.
If we're looking at something to link criminals, quite often it is research shows that they've witnessed domestic violence and domestic abuse in the home. I want to talk to you a little bit about FGM as well, because I think it is important when we're talking about violence against women and girls to kind of widen it out. And I know it's something that you've done an awful lot of work on recently and feel very strongly about as well.
Yeah, but ultimately, again, it comes back to the whole thing about domestic abuse. I think what we do with FGM, which is an incredible violation of basic human rights, is we keep othering it as some kind of social frivolous thing that we need to kind of ignore. So we've been working on this for a while. And the UK, we've had the second conviction recently. And again, in that whole kind of case as well, the victims and the perpetrators are quite similar in the sense that most women who've had FGM are perpetrators of the act. So if we intervene, that's a key thing. But then on a global level, we've just been working on the Gambia, where they're trying to repeal the legislation against FGM. So this is a global fight in order to keep women and girls safe. And it's not just about domestic abuse, it's FGM, it's sexual violence. It's a whole holistic work that we need to do in order to keep women safe in their homes and internationally as well.
Do you have much hope that there's going to be improvement?
I do have hope, but I think we have to work collectively together. I was talking to someone the other day that the people that are trying to repeal the FGM legislation in Gambia are Muslims, but the religious right, be they Muslims in Africa or the right in America trying to pull back access to abortion. I think there's a complete pushback on the progress that women have made. I am quite hopeful, but we have to work together in order to do that.
Thanks both. It's always a really difficult subject to talk about, but I was really keen to talk to both of you about this, because I know it's something that you both feel strongly about, you've both worked a lot on, and of course we had that very powerful report there by Molly Malone as well on what is going on in the UK when it comes to domestic violence. Now, it's got a bit of a gear change, because I do want to talk about something slightly different to end the programme. You can tell that we're gearing up for an election. Things are really starting to bubble away here in Westminster. And I want to talk to you about a story that you might have missed, because Conservative Party pulled this within hours. I'm talking about a grainy, black and white attack ad, which was painting a dystopian and, frankly, slightly bizarre depiction of London. Now, as I say, the ad itself was actually pulled within hours. It did leave some of us on the Politics Hub speculating that the social media team might have messed up, but his acolytes would have you believe that on planet Isaac Levido, there are no accidents. Now, if you're wondering who on earth Isaac Levido is, he is the Conservative Party's campaign guru, the guy in charge of winning the next election for them. Tall task. But as if to prove their point, in the last couple of hours, CCHQ, so Conservative Campaign Headquarters, have doubled down on the ad with this.
Birmingham, 2024. Amidst the bustle of this Midlands gem, a tale of mismanagement and fiscal irresponsibility unfolds in life under Labour. A black hole in their budget has driven the Labour-run Birmingham Council to pass on the problem, hiking up council tax by an eye-watering 21%. In the corridors of power, a battle rages on as Labour councillors find ways to plug the hole in their finances.
The London one was very similar, but the fact that they've got the Birmingham one out perhaps shows that it wasn't a mistake. It's all part of the grand master plan. Right,
Who's
let's talk
next?
to Nimco and
Who's
Cameron.
next? Which city is
Bristol,
next?
I guess.
Manchester.
Bristol.
Yes. What? I don't get it. I don't understand. What's going on?
To be fair, on Twitter, because it's such a cesspit of random people having conversation, it might work, but on the pretty world of Instagram, that's not going to work, because everyone's just going to flick through it within the first, 2 or 3 seconds. So, yeah, I don't know who that's going to win over, but it's not going to win over...
Yeah, I think...
the metropolitan elite, as they like to call us.
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit taken aback by having an American accent as a sort of narration on both this one and the other one, I think it was, because it was a little bit with the sort of black and white grain. I thought, oh my God, is this a trailer for a new Batman movie or something like this? Gotham City, the metropolis is at stake, and all this sort of thing like this, But I mean, look, I think we're going to see a lot more of this, and I think what's quite interesting what you said about they put out the London one, put it back, and then they had this one on the stocks ready to put out again.
So maybe we're all playing into their hands.
Yeah,
is it like the 38 million on the side of the bus? If we're talking about it, then
exactly.
That's the idea.
And it's like, it might be that it's just like, instead of having one really glossy ad that goes on for 2 minutes or whatever, like, they're going to have lots of these little soundbite type things operating all over. It's almost like subliminal sort of brainwashing
thing is, which I quite like, which I think they got quite lucky with, is it's the fact that you can get that emoji for the dead rose, but you can't get an emoji for the Conservatives emblem. So I think that's
the tree.
The tree. Yeah, they've still got the kind of tree, but they haven't got so I always think that they have an easy win on that when they can get that dead rose on the end of everything else.
So maybe that's what Isaac Levido should be campaigning for. Basically a Conservative emoji.
A Conservative emoji, but he doesn't need a Conservative emoji because then the Labour will start using it. But I think the Conservatives actually do quite well with that little dead rose on the end of things.
And I think in previous elections, recent elections, the Conservatives have been very good at those sort of getting into the Facebook groups. So we don't see it on our mainstream sort of radars, but it's happening there. And I'm sure Labour and others will be looking for their opportunities as well. So I'm afraid it's probably going to be more of this from all sides.
We're going to be watching out for it. We'll be watching out for it on the Politics Hub. We'll bring you the best ones throughout the election campaign. Thank you both very much for being on the programme tonight, Caroline and Nimco. Now, that is it from us tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. But up next, it is the UK Tonight with Sarah J. Mee. She's going to hear from the mother of one of those killed in the Nottingham attacks last summer about why she's calling for a change in the law. She's also going to be discussing the future of the BBC with the corporation's boss himself, Tim Davie. So that's definitely worth sticking around for. Thanks for being with us this evening, and I'll see you tomorrow, 7 p.m.